You're listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Careers Podcast, Episode 9.
Welcome to the Public Health Epidemiology Careers Podcast, where we explore public health epidemiology careers and share tips and strategies to help you enter or transition into the field. And now, your host, Dr. Charlotte Hughes Huntley.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for this episode today. I so appreciate all of you for your loyalty and for all the wonderful comments that I've been receiving and the wonderful feedback, very positive and encouraging. I'm happy to know that what I'm sharing on this podcast has been really helpful to so many of you, and I thank you for tuning in and for sharing the information about this podcast, and please continue to do that. If you haven't subscribed already, if you're just listening in on the browser at our website, that's great, but I'd love for you to subscribe through either iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn Radio or Google Play Music. You have a choice, several choices. And please continue to tell your friends and colleagues about the show and continue to write to me because I really appreciate the feedback and I enjoy reading the messages. So today I'm going to continue along with this series of mini trainings. So a couple of weeks ago, in episode 7, I talked to you about my transition into public health from the healthcare field. And then last week, I talked with some specific strategies that will be helpful for those of you who are trying to transition into public health careers. And today, I want to focus a little more on, I guess I'm going to be speaking more to those of you who are still enrolled in school, but I really want to talk about how to maximize your school resources. Now, this doesn't matter if you are enrolled in an online school or traditional brick and mortar. It really just applies to all students. And this is another one of those areas that I want to emphasize because sometimes when we're in school, we just don't think about what we may or may not need down the road, and we just are still trying to get through. And I just want to highlight some of these resources that you really should take full advantage of while you're a student because they will definitely help you as you transition and move into your career of choice. And there are a lot of things, a mixture is in a lot of the lessons I share. Some of it is I learned as I was going through. Some of it I learned in hindsight. So we're going to jump right in on how to maximize or just encouraging you to maximize those resources that are available to you as a student. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention is that as you're a student, and I've mentioned this in different places, but just really still focusing in on maximizing these school resources. So as a student, when you are assigned a topic, you have to write on a paper of, some interest. I think it's really important that you focus in on areas that you are interested in along the line of your career, disease topics that you want to research that, are of interest to you. So let me give you an example of what I mean. You don't want to go necessarily against the grain or have to reinvent processes here. But if you are naturally interested in something or you want to explore a certain area in your career and you're given you're given a topic assignment in a course, choose a topic that is in an area of interest. I used to commonly, especially at the very beginning, I would pick a topic in infectious disease because that's where I worked and that's what I was most familiar with. And my thought was, this is easier. I'm just going to, kind of get it done and move on because it required the least amount of energy, I guess, or effort. And it was a little bit more comfortable for me. But I was really interested in chronic diseases. So I guess as my confidence got up a little bit, or as I thought, I don't know when the light bulb came on at whatever point, but I think that at whatever point I started to choose topics that I was interested in and exploring those areas, it became a way for me to kind of help start bridging the gap, start to lay that foundation to move myself from what I was used to, which was infectious disease, into the area I wanted to be in, which was chronic disease. So it gave me a chance to start learning more about the different chronic diseases, and it became more of a natural process. So as I moved in further along and began to, get work in an area of chronic disease or volunteer in an area that related to chronic disease, I had already started to learn more about it just simply by selecting those topics as a student and learning as a part of the assignment. So that's what I think of as a resource because we're required to do these assignments. Why not pick something that's going to benefit us in down the road. So that's the first thing I want to mention. The next thing I want to mention, sort of stemming from that, is that one of the resources you want to use for your school is the Writing Center. Now, every school has some sort of a Writing Center, regardless of what they call it. But you want to be able to go in there and be able to access, there are so many templates, so many resources available around the writing style. If you're required to follow an APA format, then there may be cheat sheets or guides that you can download, those templates that show you how to format your what font to use, what size to use, where the margins should be. All of those things are very helpful. If you download that, save that in a place that you can reference later. At first, you need it to kind of guide you step by step. The more you do it, of course, the easier it becomes. But there are so many resources that are available to you that I really encourage you to maximize. Not just get by or just do enough to get through the course, but take full advantage of it, because that preparation really does help you beyond just a student status. I remember at the beginning of grad school, I remember feeling very confident in my ability to write. I thought that would probably come a little easier to me than it did. I was really in quite a bit of a shock when I started being challenged by the level of writing and the style and what I had to adjust to on that graduate level compared to what I had been used to before that. So sometimes the Writing Center will provide these templates and tools, and then also the staff is available to, you can submit an assignment and then receive feedback. And that is something that I really encourage you to use as a student, because now as an epidemiologist, especially if you're interested in going in that direction, you will do a lot of writing, and it will be very different. You may get through grad school and feel like, okay, I've got this now and I'm ready, and writing is not going to be an issue as I move into my career, but it will become an issue, because sometimes depending on where you're working, their style for that company may be a little different than what you're used to as from an academic standpoint. But just strengthening what is available, grabbing all those resources available to you as a student and strengthening and really using all of those skills to the fullest, you really maximize on that learning curve and really gain the skills, the writing skills and all of those, fully maximizing those resources in the Writing Center will really help you down the road, regardless of what direction, what career field you go into. If you continue along with your education, if you go from a master's to a doctoral level, by all means, it will benefit you. But regardless of what position you actually get into, I just know, speaking as an epidemiologist, it is definitely something that will help you down the road if you go in that direction. But I know it applies to other fields as well. So then I would also, sometimes there's a literature matrix system that your school uses that's available through the Writing Resource Center, and that is valuable, because I, to this day, still use a matrix type of system when it comes down to gathering information about, journal articles I've read, or just trying to pull that information together when I'm preparing to write a literature review. And this all stemmed from what I learned as a graduate student. I've just tweaked it and revised it, and it made it, sort of fit into my work scenarios, but it's still the same foundation. So again, use those resources from the Writing Center to the fullest. While you're a student, it's just easy for you to get your hands on that information. Another thing I want to mention, still kind of in the similar line there, is the library. Your access to databases and journals and material as a student is, oh my goodness, I had no idea how phenomenal that was and how wonderful that was until I didn't have it anymore. So even as an alumni, you have access to some level of databases, but I'm sure some schools may have full-blown access to everything just as though you were a student, but most of the case, in most scenarios, your access as an alumni is much more limited than as a student. That's what I found in the school that I attended. It's the situation where I teach, and among most of my colleagues that I speak with, that I work with right now, the same situation. So where you have access to some journals and some databases, like I said, as a student, really being able to take full advantage of what is available to you through the library is really important. It teaches you you're really gaining that knowledge and that skill, and you're maximizing on being able to really dig in and use resources. And sometimes if there's like a really new article that is out that maybe not available freely through maybe Google Scholar, for example, or PubMed, then your school may have agreement with that particular journal where you can get that, they can get that for you and have it delivered for the purpose of your coursework. Now, that's a good practice to go through and to expand, because it helps you to see what is really available through the databases and to pull out the best, resources, not just grab the first article that, relates to your assignment to get it over with, but really being able to dig and research and look for the newest and the latest research and trying to access that and go through the practice of doing that, so that when you move beyond student status and you're actually working in a position, in a field where you are required to do a little bit of research, or you're having to gather this information, you will have really gained skills that will make that part of your work much less painful and much more productive. And you will really appreciate, you have to trust me on this one to some extent, but you really will appreciate what you learn when you maximize those library resources. Once you get out into the field, whether you're continuing your own research, if you're, or whatever position you're in. Okay. So beyond school status, what you learn in those library skills as a student will really be helpful for you. And it's also these are skills that are going to be really the kind of skills you want to highlight when you're trying to get into a position. I can speak personal experience for epidemiology, but I know it applies to other career positions. When you can highlight those type of skills and you can speak to that knowledge, that is those little things, like, I say little things, they're not little, but those are skills that will add up and give you that edge and give you that, a little bit of edge over the competition for a position when you're trying to transition into the work, into your position, whatever career position you are seeking. Okay. So the next thing I want to, kind of going in that same direction is I would encourage you to use your student status to get into associations and to get memberships into associations in organizations like the American Public Health Association and others. There are so many other associations in public health, related to public health, whether it's global public health, or if you're looking at epidemiology, specific groups, if you're looking at, maybe a certain indication, like maybe heart disease or central nervous system diseases, or, you want to look at database management or secondary data analysis, or biostatistics, there are so many different directions you can go in public health. And there are so many associations that tailor to those sort of, niche groups. So as a student, sometimes you get free membership into these associations, or you get a really reduced membership that makes a fee, which makes membership really affordable. And as a student, I encourage you to explore all of that, because I've, touched on it in other episodes, but there's such value in being a member and participating in an association that covers your interest area. And as a student, if you take advantage of that resource, as your student status to get either free membership or reduced cost membership, then that gives you an opportunity to explore many associations and see what you like, if it fits for you, if it's something that, will help you, if it's just a good connection. And you can do that without very much cost or any cost. And then once you have graduated and you've moved into the career status and you have to pay full membership. Sometimes they graduate it up. You get like the early career kind of discount, but it's still nothing. It's a big difference between those fees and free or the student cost versus, those early career, membership costs or the full membership costs. So if you can explore that as a student, it not only gives you full access to all of the resources available within those associations, and you get to network and have tap into all of those benefits or resources, but you get to do it at a reduced or free cost. And then you can identify which ones you want to continue beyond your school status. And I emphasize that because sometimes we'll grab the kind of obvious connection or the more popular, choice to connect with, and just kind of sit there and go through the motions as a student, but not really fully maximize that and use it to the full potential, which will, again, give you that edge and that advantage once you are trying to move into your position of the career that you want to be in. Now, I guess as a little bit of a side note there, those of you who have already graduated and are still trying to get where you want to go, I would still encourage you to explore some of the early career options for membership, because sometimes, like I said, there's a discounted cost for getting involved in some of those associations. That's just a little bit of a side note there. But maximize your that resource as a student, your student status, to help you get membership, get into networks, and then of course add that to your resume as well. Okay, so moving right along, the next thing, which is still kind of in the same kind of category here, is use your career center resources. And every school has some sort of a career center. And like I said, it may have a specific title or name, but it's designed to help students prepare for work. So if they will do anything from helping you with building a resume or CV. Sometimes there's access to certain job boards or similar type services. And those are great because once you've created and you have your CV and your resume together, you can then post it sometimes on those sites, and other organizations partner with your school. Sometimes they come to your school looking for particular types of students because they're familiar with the program and they want to recruit from that pool of students. So it's a great place to, great way for you to go ahead and take advantage of that career resource and then place your resume or CV where they can find you. That's a wonderful option, depending on the situation, circumstances. But even beyond that, you have access to sometimes webinars, workshops on job readiness, and just all sorts of topics that are within that career center of your school. And I remember I would get emails about, a webinar coming up or something. And of course, I remember at one point thinking I'm just too busy for that, or I just could never seem to figure out how to fit that in because I was so busy. But a little bit later on, as I progressed through my journey, I really started using those services. I actually made it a point of fitting that into my routine on a regular basis so that I had, I refer to that as my professional development time. So even as a student, I became really aware of the importance of all of what, all that was available within that center, the career center. And I started to use that. I started to apply it. I mean, those resources that I tapped into have helped me immensely. There are several things I could think of that I was able to use that have helped me get where I am right now. So I encourage you to take advantage of what's available in the Career Center. Even if you can't attend one of the live webinars, you can access through their archives. You can replay, watch the replay of it later. And those are just really, really valuable resources for you to tap into, whatever is available through the Career Center. And I mean, there are so many other things that go on. Sometimes there are job fairs. There are, virtual and in-person job fairs. I mean, there's just so much that the Career Center has available to students. But I think, again, it just comes down to we don't take full advantage of it sometimes because we're just so busy and we just don't see the significance of it while we're a student. These are just things that if you can maximize as a student, again, it just better positions you for that moment of, you're finishing the degree and trying to transition. You've just better prepared yourself by maximizing these resources. So another thing I want to mention, another resource that I would really encourage you to take full advantage of is the networking within your classroom. So in my school, it was called the Course Cafe, and it was just a place we logged in at the very beginning of the term. Not every school has a different name for it, but they all have some version of this, okay? So at the very beginning of the term, there's a little place, maybe you log into a special room, a discussion board, and the whole purpose is to just introduce yourself. Hey, my name is Dr. Huntley. I like mountain bike riding on the weekends. I live in South Carolina. I have, whatever you want to talk about. I've worked in infectious disease. I've worked in chronic disease. You tell a little bit about yourself in this little, course cafe, and the instructor interacts with each one of, the students. And it's just a little interaction time. And usually it's like that first day, or maybe within the first or second day, you do those introductions. In a brick and mortar, sometimes it's just the face-to-face that you're doing. You're talking about it on the first day, or you still may have that virtual setting. Even though you're physically in the classroom, you still may have that virtual class cafe type of setup where you can interact with students, your classmates. Now, the reason I'm encouraging you to do this is because you'll be surprised how many times you have a classmate, especially at this level. Grad students are working people. We're career people. So we are sometimes moving from one career to another, elevating up. But a lot of us are already working in the area of our degree category. So for public health, a lot of us are already working in some aspect of public health. So it's a very good way, a very easy way to naturally connect with people who may already be in the area that you want to move into. And that makes the conversation very natural, very easy. And sometimes, you may not decide to reach out and start one-on-one conversations with them. Sometimes it's easy to do. You can tell those people that are really outgoing and open and want to do that. And then some may not really want to. But the other part, if you don't directly connect with them, and start to kind of develop, interaction with them one-on-one, the other part of that, or the benefit of that, is if you've identified them, made a mental note, oh, this person works in clinical trials, and I'm interested in going into that when I finish. I really will be curious about what their work is like and what they do. But then also, as you progress through the course, you'll pay close attention to the responses that they write to discussion posts, or their interaction in the classroom, their feedback they provide to a question or scenario, because they're given a perspective that is something that may be even more interesting to you if they're already in a place that you're wanting to move into. I hope that makes sense. It's just it's a subtle thing that could be easily missed because, if our head's down, we're focused on our assignment, we're not thinking about anything around us, we could miss that. But it's a very easy way to grab a little bit extra value out of that classroom experience. You're both in the same class, going through the same process, assignments. And if they're already in a position, then it's easy when you're discussing, using the example of the clinical trials, when you're getting ready to talk about, if a part of your assignment is talking about, writing protocols, and you're thinking, well, gosh, this is so foreign because I've never been involved in clinical trials, but that's exactly what I want to do when I finish my degree. And this person is maybe working for a clinical trial or working for a sponsor, and they're just doing the data collection. They're not actually doing the analytics of it, but they're in that atmosphere. So their feedback is going to be valuable to the discussion and can add some value to you just from that perspective that they provide. And vice versa. You may be in a position to, share that with somebody else. And that's really how it works back and forth. So that resource of the course cafe, or whatever it's called for your school, is really valuable. And I encourage you to, pay attention, if nothing else, so that you can just be a little bit more attuned to the feedback of that colleague and that classmate. But I really encourage you to reach out if you feel any way inclined to reach out to that person that, may be in an area that you're interested in. Just ask some questions. It's kind of an icebreaker. It makes for, just good relationships. Sometimes good friendships are built off of that. Okay, so I will move on into the next, tip is going to be that I would encourage you to seek Facebook groups for like within, or that are based around your school. Now, this is not a direct school resource, but as a student and in that status, sometimes there are Facebook groups that are very specific to your school, and it's made up of students that are just like you in similar situations, and you can, kind of support each other and answer your question, bounce questions back and forth. And if one doesn't exist, I encourage you to consider starting one. And it's for that student status. I'm still talking. And I'll give you an example. By the time I finished the classroom phase of my PhD, and I was at the point of dissertation, I joined a Facebook group from my school. It was all students from my school. They were all in some phase of the dissertation process. And that became vital to me. That was really like a lifeline for me those last couple of years. And I really, really got away from posting on my personal Facebook page or wall, and I just did not interact much personally on Facebook because it was a huge distraction. I wasn't trying to be mean or antisocial, but it was so distracting, so that I just decided I needed to cut that out. I tried cutting back, but I just completely cut it out while I really focused on the dissertation. But I still went on Facebook regularly. I just went straight to my group because that group was really, really important to me. I could ask a question. I could, talk about whatever my frustrations were. I could get really good. I mean, it was well managed, well organized, and it was just a good, valuable resource. And it was all my classmates, schoolmates, and we were all in the same school, not exactly the same program. I mean, there were all sorts of disciplines in the group, but we were all trying to finish our dissertation and move on into our careers. And we talked about, toward the end, those that were finishing up, we're talking about preparing for, disseminating their findings. I mean, it was every level, every step of the process was all mixed in together, which made for a great comfort zone. So you didn't feel awkward being new if someone else was excited about, defending their final study. And when you defended yours, you could relate to that person that was brand new to the group talking about working on their premise. And so though, if you don't have something like that or can't find one that's related to your school, then think about starting one. Again, I'm careful when I suggest that because I don't want to create a distraction for you, but it's just an idea if it's that you may want to consider it. That I think it was a valuable resource for me, so I am putting it out there, and you can decide if that is something that would be helpful for you or not. And then I would also, this is another tip, attend live events whenever possible. Now, I say, online students, of course, to do that. But I'm also speaking to you guys. Like I said, this is for everybody. If you go to a brick and mortar, sometimes you're so busy, you're trying to do what you need to do, and you get in, you go to class, and you leave. If there's a workshop or some type of live event going on, around your campus, you may not even know about it because you're just not thinking about all that stuff. You don't have time for all that. And when you're online, for years I never had a physical event that I participated in. I met with anybody face to face regarding my school. I just didn't even think about that. But as soon as I did, it was life-changing. Oh my goodness. It was so invigorating. It was exciting. These events are just jam-packed full of information, resources, value, content. I mean, you literally it's like getting plugged in and filling up your tank with everything that you need so that when you unplug and go back to your routine, you've got something to sustain you for a while. And there's faculty that's available to talk to you, answer questions face-to-face, one-on-one. You can talk to, it's just really, really bringing speakers, just a wealth of resources and information packed into whatever the live event is, whether it's a short workshop or, several weeks. It could be alumni meetups where you can ask questions of alumni that have already gone through where you are trying to get through. And it's just really, really, really helpful and really valuable. So the next best thing would be attending something virtual because a lot of schools have these virtual type of events as well. And that's a good option as well. I just highly encourage you to, when you have an opportunity to get face-to-face and interact with any kind of event like that is ideal. But the next best thing is a virtual type of event because they can be just as powerful and they're gaining popularity as well. So don't just dismiss it because you're busy doing other things, because that's an opportunity to just tap into just so many resources that will be just helpful for you. Again, this is all about maximizing this journey, getting the most out of it, more than just surviving, so that you're better prepared on the other end when you're trying to get into your career field. Then the last tip I want to bring up and highlight is I would encourage you to maximize communication and use of technology. Whatever your school provides, maximize that. Whether it's if they provide you with software that you can download and use, don't just get by with it, but really try to make the most of it. One thing comes to mind is SPSS, and I know it's really common for a lot of grad schools to use that statistical software when you're trying to do any kind of epidemiological analysis or biostatistics. And then beyond school, most companies use a different software. And so I still encourage you to learn how to use SPSS, do more than just the basics. If you're doing a dissertation or thesis and you can have any kind of data that needs to be, analyzed, I encourage you to use that. Do tutorials. They have them all. Your school provides all those tutorials somewhere or links to them. really learn that, because it will open up a door or lay the foundation so that even if you don't know the exact software that the company uses, they're aware that most grad schools use SPSS. And if you can label yourself as, proficient or moderate or whatever, give yourself a level of understanding and skill set, then that opens a door for you to be able to move into something else. It adds to that opportunity. The other thing is not just software, but just any kind of technology. If your school uses any sort of video conferencing, Skype for Business, the Outlook system that's really popular with schools because I think most of the time it's a free package. But maximize all that's in Office 365. I'm a Mac person, I'm an Apple person, but I still have the Office 365. And I think that anytime you have the ability to access that for free, there are so many apps that come along with it that you can learn how to use. Use it in your courses, your assignments. You learn how to use those programs, those software, maximize on those resources because they will help you when you get into your career field. I work for a company the last few years that is global. My office is at my home, but this company is global. So we have meetings, several meetings a week where I'm interacting through video conferencing with my colleagues that are in India, in the UK, in different parts of the United States. And it is amazing to me that we use this technology that some of it was available to me as a student, but I've been able to maximize on this technology. And the world is getting smaller in the sense that we are all businesses are connecting and using the internet and these types of services so that it feels smaller because we're connecting virtually in a way that we just didn't do years before. And it's only getting better as time goes on. So when you have the ability to use and maximize any kind of communication and technology in school, I encourage you to do that because it makes you much more comfortable and opens up opportunities and options for you once you move beyond. And it just helps you to position yourself in a better place in the the workforce and in the field. For me, that has been vital. Like I said, I interact with my colleagues around the world on a weekly basis, a regular basis, and I know them. In some cases, I feel more comfortable and casual, and I know more about them and their families than I did with some of the people I worked in. I went in and out of the building with here for several years, locally. So there was a point where, like, I remember joking, we worked, my lab was on the second floor. And everybody in on the microbiology division, we joked about not even knowing who the people were on the third floor. And I kind of think about that now when I'm considering the fact that I interact with colleagues around the world on a regular basis, and I really get to know them. All of that comes back to just getting comfortable with the technology. It doesn't mean you have to master everything, but if it's available to you, I encourage you to tap into that, to use that. Document that skill set. That becomes really important when you are looking for a job and you're trying to move forward and you're trying to just positioning yourself for what's available at the time that you are ready to, you complete your degree and you're ready to move on. I hope that all that has made sense and you find value in that. I mean, you just really, I guess if I had to summarize it all, you just never know when you're going to use the knowledge and the skills that you've obtained as a student in your career. So, I really am encouraging you to maximize these resources so that you are best equipped for whatever future career, you move into. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up, and I thank you for tuning in. I really do appreciate each and every one of you for listening and all of your feedback. And until next time, I will say have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Careers Podcast at drchuntley.com.